Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
And I'm Chris Clements.
And we are grateful to have one of our sponsors.
Honored.
Yes, and grateful that one of our sponsors, AFP Arizona, Stephen Shadegg, is the state director for Americans for Prosperity Arizona. Stephen, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for being here. It's great to have you.
It's always fun to join you guys. It's always fun to listen to you.
Well, at least you're listening.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
I will admit I don't listen to the full series all the time, but I do try to grab it. You know, either
As soon
going
as I
to work,
start
coming
talking,
in.
he's like,
Yeah, last week.
Last
week Sean was talking. I think it was Sean was talking about like making the world a better place, and I thought to myself, "Wow, that's a really tall order."
yeah.
Well, at least he didn't start singing or anything.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not going to sing. Not now. Stephen, we're at the beginning of the year. The session for the Arizona legislature is just getting underway. What stuff does Americans for Prosperity Arizona? What are you working on? What are you focused on? What do you care about? Right?
Yeah. So kind of a background on Americans for Prosperity and Americans for Prosperity Arizona is we consider ourselves a grassroots organization. So for most folks that hear grassroots, that can mean anything from door knocking to making phone calls. But our core base is in leveraging the voice of the American people in Arizona, to be able to communicate with their members of Congress, with their state legislators, and essentially send a message to their representative what is important to them. And we do that collectively when we have one issue or a bigger issue in which we really want a lot of people to chime in because they have strong feelings about it. And so what we do is we basically do that either on the federal level or the state level, and then we do it politically. We have multiple wings. We've got a C3, which is really focused on pure education. And that education really is we hold classes that explain to people how they can contact their representative. Best way to do that, best way to have that communication. Lots of folks, as you see, we've all seen the shots in DC of someone getting in the elevator and screaming at the representative. We actually showed that
in some of the hearings this morning.
Yeah. We show that video and we said, this is not a great way to approach
They can't
a
hear
legislator.
you.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be yelled at,
And
right?
nobody
Chased
cares.
into the bathroom.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, chasing fair senators into the bathroom at ASU.
And I think that with the media today, that happens a lot. We all think that's the way that you get their attention. But the reality is it's human instinct. Nobody wants to be screamed at. They want to have an intelligent conversation. And if you disagree, you can disagree, but do it in a manner that's polite and honoring of their duty as a representative and you as their constituent. So we teach a lot of that courses at the C3 level, and then we have a C4, which we actively lobby both the state capitol and the federal, and then we have the grassroots side of it, and then also we have a political action, which involves in anything from governor's races to congressional races to Senate races, sometimes even presidential races. So that's our main focus, is getting the people's voice heard and making sure that we advocate for good policy. And when I say good policy, limited government, free market policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all for that.
And absolutely. I mean, clearly the themes of it fits closely with the themes of our podcast, faith, free enterprise, and free markets.
You guys don't get involved with faith issues.
We don't.
Per se.
No social issues.
Yeah.
Which is kind of nice because it allows you to steer clear of stuff.
Yeah.
Most of it is.
Do you have a lot of people coming and trying to pull you into those arguments from time to time? You just say, listen, we're focused on really freedom, free enterprise.
Yeah, not as many as I used to.
Yeah.
I think that's as kind of America's Prosperity has kind of set that clear line.
Good.
The other thing we don't get engaged in, I think we're slowly beginning to build what we call a policy point of view on it, is any type of electoral policy. We've steered clear of that. But I do think that there is becoming a demand to make sure that we're keeping it very constitutional, versus advocating one way or the other for different forms of elections and election lobbying. And I think it's just, you got to keep it by the book, constitutional, and understand that there's an obligation that we have as citizens and Americans to make sure that we do have a legal system and we need to follow it.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the issues where there's been so much misinformation on the right about elections. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad it's been. And, so maybe now that there's a new county recorder, that is supposedly trusted by the grassroots more so than the last one.
You would hope.
We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So what issues do you have popping on the state level?
Yeah. So on the state level, I think we'll start on an issue that America's Prosperity will not be engaging in down at the Capitol, but we're going to be watching closely, obviously, the election integrity. I think everybody has a goal of making sure that Arizona is not the last state to count.
Right.
Gosh, that would be great.
Yeah, it would be great because it is not helping us from a public perspective. Most other states look at Arizona, they say, oh, they're a purple state. Well, that perception, especially this last election cycle, is there because we didn't finalize the count until 14 days later.
Right.
No one is caring or paying attention at that point. So I think you're going to see that's going to be the number one priority for state representatives. Our focus is really going to be on continuing to roll back regulations, finding ways in which we can show government transparency, in addition to hopefully some housing reforms. But I think a lot of the focus is really pulling regulations back, hopefully trying to get the economy moving, but really helping individuals understand the bureaucracy to government and what is actually happening with the money and where it's being spent. So one of our focuses this year is actually going to be on regulatory dark matter, which is
regulatory
super cool,
dark
right?
matter.
Yeah,
That
super
actually
cool.
is
Did
awesome.
Pearl Jam have an album called Dark Matter?
Yeah, I think so. I'll tease a little visionary for
Is
like
there
an
a song
ad.
that goes with it?
Well,
we'll make a
there
song.
might be. You might like this.
I'm just riffing at this point.
Yeah, so the vision I have for this is on a digital ad of you're thinking about Star Wars, right? And the credits, and think about, all these regulations that just kind of fade off into the dark that no one really knows about, right?
That is such a great visual.
There might be a few other things teed up and some dates that we might try to push around. But yeah, so the regulatory dark matter, really, it sounds really cool. It's a great policy, but at its core, it is a Trump-level executive order that he issued in office at the federal level. When Biden took office, he actually rescinded it, and there's now a focus around pushing this at the state level. So what takes place is that when the federal government issues funds to a state, there are sub-regulations within that, and those sub-regulations don't ever make it to the public. They're not disclosed anywhere. And lots of times they can put kind of weird regulations as to, in one state, they put out a blog explaining how you had to apply for this grant, and someone did it and they're like, I didn't see this. Like, oh, you didn't see our blog on it? And so it's those types of things that, we really want to make sure, whether it's just a one pager initially, that's somewhere in a PDF on state government's website, so people understand where the money is going and what the regulations are behind the funding. So that's one of our core focuses.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. Because I think if people understood where the money's going and how it's being spent and what the strictures are and limitations and non-limitations and mandates, I think it would just baffle them. And
Absolutely.
It would definitely, it is what is needed to get an outcry of people to say, look, we've got to pull back. Because as your dad used to say, it's not enough for members of Congress, elected officials, to see the light. They need to feel the heat. And so it's not until people start really saying, hey, this stuff matters to us, we've got to make this more efficient.
Yeah, and we have to
follow the money.
Yes, follow the money, but also help them understand how truly giant government is.
Yes.
Your listeners know this because you guys talk about politics.
Well,
but,
under the Biden administration, what is it? 100,000 pages have been added to the Federal Register.
Yep.
I can guarantee you nobody even knows what that is.
Yeah,
maybe Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch has tracked all that, but not that many people.
I don't
know
even think many
what that
people
is.
can really actually visualize 100,000 pages.
100,000 pages added to the Federal Register.
That's a stack that's going to be taller than the ceiling.
And is the director of the OMB, is his purview going to be, for every one regulation, 3, 4, 5 are gone?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, that's the type of mindset you have to cut down, the behemoth that government has become. And I think this election across the country has been enough, until we say enough, it's going to continue.
You think it's been enough?
So I think people are saying we've had enough of big
Enough of
government,
that. Enough
Yeah.
is
and we
enough.
actually want you to do something.
I mean, I think that the enthusiasm around what Vivek and Elon are trying to do with Doge, I think is a pretty indicative of people saying, "Look, we've got to find some saneness." in
Yeah.
this.
But the sheer scale of it though is that 4 years isn't enough time.
No,
That's
exactly.
how big
That's-
this thing
no,
is.
you
That's
really
how big it
need
is.
the expectation game. I mean, we really need people to understand that if you expect Elon to fix this in Trump's term, it's only begun to scratch the surface. I mean, this is,
Well, it also
a lot's gonna
emphasizes
depend
how
on what
much
goes on.
damage has been done over the last 4
Yeah,
years.
I mean, it's taken, well, and it's not just the last 4 years, it's the
it's
last
really the 15.
50
Yeah.
or 60 or 70 years, that where you had the administrative state just building and building and building and building and being protected by, all these regulations and, especially
Well, the culture of Washington,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court, it wasn't until they got rid of the Chevron deference
Yes.
that we really now have a shot at actually pulling some of this stuff back.
Yeah.
Because they had given all of the authority to the bureaucrats.
I'm going to get back to that one, but I will touch on one more piece of state legislation that we're going to do around regulatory reform. Last year, we ran RAINS Act. We're going to run that again, primarily because we want to hold Hobbs accountable. For those that don't know RAINS, it is a very simple form of representative democracy. So right now, heads of agencies and boards can get executive orders, and anything that's over 250,000 over 5 years, technically the governor can sign off on, and we never know where it really goes. The RAINS Act essentially says if it's over 250,000 over a 5-year period, it gets sent to the state legislature. State legislature looks at it, they vote on it, they decide whether or not, yes, we want to spend that money, no, we don't want to spend that money. And I think the best way to explain it really is, for those that are in relationships and you have shared funds, we can't just go out and spend. I could not spend $250K without talking to my spouse about it.
Right.
I would be sitting out in the cold right now. I think most people probably can't spend $500 without talking to their spouse about it. So that's all this is sit down, have a conversation, make sure that both parties, in this case, your representatives and the people of Arizona, agree that that is a good use of the money. And then once that agreement's made, then they vote on it and send it over to the governor.
Well, and not only that, it adheres to the constitutional principles of it's the legislative branch that spends the money.
Yep.
Not the governor, not
Right.
the executive branch. So good
It
for you
does?
guys.
Really?
Well, in theory.
Sometimes.
And that's why this is important. So.
Well, it would be nice to see the legislative branch claw back some of their power and start asserting that in terms of their obligation to oversee
Yeah.
how money is spent and the manner in which it's spent,
Well, and it's
both on the state and the federal
but I
level.
feel, but in the state level, I feel like it's a lot less of an issue than it is at the federal.
Oh,
The Fed-
absolutely.
the Congress has
Absolutely.
completely abdicated
because
all
there's
of
more
its-
accountability at the state level.
Yeah.
There is.
And more ability to raise hell if things are going off
Right.
the rails.
So what's the priority?
Yeah,
the
so
federal
on the federal side, right now, Americans for Prosperity, our national group, just announced a $20 million spend yesterday on essentially extending the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which was a Trump era issue, which we
Man,
believe
you guys have been like putting a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff out on
it's
that
our number one
as-
priority.
as
Yeah.
priority.
as
Yep.
it should be.
And lots of people say like, well, it was Trump. Isn't he going to push it again? And the answer is yes, but this has such a big impact on working America and middle-class families that if we don't push this and we don't get it extended, we're going to have an issue. And so, folks like Ruben Gallego, folks like Senator Kelly, we need anybody in Arizona to just quickly jump on to protectprosperity.org, and you just click a button and you can send a petition or a letter directly to their office explaining that you support this. And I'll give you a reason why you want to send that quick letter. For an average individual, if we don't extend the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, it's about $1,000 less that you'll have. If we do, for businesses, it's about $2,700. So I know most people say, $1,000, that's not much, but when you think about it today, I had this conversation with a lot of folks. It feels like $100 is no longer $100. Like 1,000 is the new 100. So an extra $1,000 laying around for
Yeah.
that, crud I didn't work that into my budget goes a long ways.
Yeah, it
Well,
does
and that's
go a
year
long
over
ways.
year. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not a one-time thing. I
Well,
mean,
let's hope that they're more bold than they were before. You know, in terms of corporate taxes, in terms of capital gains taxes, take them down to 15. Death tax, eliminate it completely.
Yep.
all those would be great, but the core of this is extending what's there, because that gives
And making them permanent.
yeah,
not
that gives
sunsetting.
businesses
This
you know,
idea that this is what I've hated about the act at the beginning of this. Look what we're doing right now. With, you know, all these taxes that are sunsetting, tax cuts that are sunsetting, and then they go up. I'm tired. They need to be bold enough now to say,
Or-
make them permanent.
Or if we're going to make tax cuts, have a sunset, then every other bit of spending should have a sunset.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just come on.
the club, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you guys are
Yeah.
engaged in that.
No, we've been reposting some of your stuff on
good.
LinkedIn, which has been good.
And
Yeah.
and just as we've said before, Americans for Prosperity Arizona is one of our sponsors, and we couldn't be more thankful.
Yeah,
We
we're
appreciate
happy
it.
to do
Thank
it.
you so much for doing it.
We love what you guys are doing. Obviously, I have a long history with you guys, and I've loved it from the
You
beginning.
do have a long
He
history.
does.
A long and
Sean's
dark
probably
history.
gonna
Yeah.
hopefully
Long
spare
and
me from the
dark
embarrassment, but like
history.
Sean knew me not quite when I was in diapers, but shortly after,
Shortly
right?
after.
Yeah.
Long and dark history.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
He's had to put up with a lot of our challenges that we create from a political way in our family. So we love to cause trouble, right?
That's such a
Listen, we
diplomatic way
can
to put it.
honestly say the both of us, all of us, all three of us would not be here if it weren't for your dad.
Yeah.
I mean, in many ways.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't be.
100 Yeah.
For
Literally
sure.
1,000%
No way.
for
Not
you.
1,000% for you.
Thanks,
but,
Dad.
But
50% for you, maybe
Or
30,
more than
40% for me.
maybe
I mean,
more than 50%.
Yeah.
I mean, he took a wild risk on hiring me to be his campaign manager when I had basically no experience, and it changed my life.
well,
Just
and
fundamentally.
I've said it before, after my father passed away and I would pay a visit to your dad and this kind soul across the table here, he would tell me to stay after the beer delegation had left, and he would take another hour with me. And I never forgot that. And that created a friendship and a bond that exists today.
Yeah. Stephen, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We'll have you back after the session. We can report on
Yeah,
how things
would
are
love to
going.
come back.
By that time, we'll know a little bit more about what's going on at the federal level.
I
as
hope
well.
so. One bill or two bills. We'll see.
That's right.
I heard a great argument yesterday for two. And I was kind of leaning towards the one big, beautiful one. But on the tax side, the argument was just so complicated and there's so many disparate interests that having that set aside and trying to get it done before the recess would be the optimum goal.
Yeah.
That getting some quick wins ahead of time.
I mean, I can see that because they want to get the border stuff done.
the
But
border and,
I-
and the military and some other
I
things.
do feel like you lose leverage if you start separating things,
Yeah, that's
True.
especially when
That's
I
true,
mean,
but
when
look
it
at
comes
the
to
last CR.
reconciliation. Yeah,
It was
right.
big and beautiful and it crashed and burned.
Right. Where can people sign up or get
Yeah.
engaged?
So for most people, it'll probably be on Facebook, Americans for Prosperity Arizona, or we have a website. It's americansforprosperityarizona.org. And then where they can take action on the federal stuff, again, it's protectprosperity.org. Pretty much if you Google Americans for Prosperity, even if you don't put Arizona in, it'll take you to our homepage. Our homepage then will drive you to our state page, and you can stay in touch there. When you do sign up, just to let you guys know, the next step is basically we have a team of about 14 folks who are out in the field. They'll send you either an email, a phone call, or a text. You can click which you prefer. And really, you can be really transparent of saying, look, I just want to keep up with the information. I don't want to volunteer, or I do want to volunteer. And we'll work with you on that. But you will talk to an actual person, not a AI generated response.
That's
So,
awesome. No, that's
always good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
In this day and age.
Yeah, well, that's our goal. You got to get people back
human
involved, and
touch.
it takes some time to engage and help them understand that this is an important fight.
Well, elections and policy are made on the grassroots. So it's great that you guys are taking that
Yeah.
approach.
Thank you.
And thanks for being here. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah. God bless.
Take care.